Yo, what up guys, TFW Starving here. Just wanted to showcase a potential 3.25 league starter that I've been considering. I have cooked it up following the patch notes that obliterated the Scion version of this build, but I feel like it's a pretty decent substitute, so just thought I'd throw it out there for anybody that wanted to see it. I am not committed to starting this build yet. I am somewhat eyeing a Essence Drain Contagion Trickster build, which looks pretty fun, but it's either this one or that. We'll see. Don't know yet. Without further ado, let's just go over the build in general. The pros and cons of the build, I definitely say starting off, the pros would be the fact that it is incredibly SSF friendly. You can craft all of this gear totally on your own, like super simple. It's got step-by-step crafting guides in the notes and stuff. It'll like tell you what to do and how to do it and when to do it and the order and all that. It's very good on a budget. Definitely my number one like budget friendly build that I would recommend for this kind of thing. Additionally, it's fairly tanky. I mean, 97k max hit on the like late game setup, and then obviously like 7 mil DPS is pretty good for literally self-crafted gear and all that stuff. We get spell suppression capped via like Mage Bane and the Evasion Mastery here. Then obviously just the rest on gear. It is a damage over time build, which means that you don't have to constantly worry about like DPS uptime. You just hit and then let the dot tick down. It's very simple, very easy to play. The clear speed feels amazing in my opinion. Just like throwing an Exsanguinate out there and just watching it chain everywhere is just super satisfying. As for the cons, we are pretty low Fizz max hit. It is difficult to get Fizz mitigation nowadays with Fizz taking his elemental taken away from us. It's definitely not bad. We do stack some endurance charges here, so like it's not the worst. Additionally, some would say that the playstyle is very clunky. I mean, we are self-casting a skill until you get a little bit of cast speed that can feel quite bad. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a potential con that some people may feel. As for what the build is good at farming, Expedition is the big one. Obviously in SSF, that's number one thing that you want to farm. So they kind of feed into each other there. This build does well at Expedition, and it also likes the gear from Expedition. So that's definitely the number one thing that I'll be farming. If I do run this build in SSFHC, that's for sure the mechanic I'm going into. Things it struggles at, it definitely could have better single target DPS, but personally it's good enough to do your void stones. It's good enough to get anything that you need. It's not an uber boss or day one or anything like that. Like you shouldn't expect that, but it can scale up to that point with enough investment levels. And you'll need to swap over to a crit based hit version, but it's absolutely possible to get there, and you can hit some pretty insane DPS numbers. So that should not be a problem. Just wanted to start off with the simple, easygoing early game, like day 1, 2, 3 level gear and gem loadouts and all that. Please check out these loadouts here. I've got some configs set up to show you like what you should be at like different investment levels. For starters, for your early game, obviously you're going to be running Hierophant. That is the number one most OP ascendancy, I'd say, this league for sure. With the minimum endurance charges, the endurance charge change is massive for tanks, so like this is going to be so nice. And then Arcane Surge giving 20% more spell damage is huge for us. Obviously we're a spell build. Duh. And then the spell damage leech is actually a very nice tech for sustaining Reap. Previously we were getting leech on glove implicits, but now we just get it off the ascendancy, which is incredibly helpful. The fourth ascendancy point is kind of whatever. It doesn't do too much. There's just no better options. Like we're not running a totem and we're not running a brand, so like there's no other choice. But the other nodes should make up for it in their power alone. I mean, this endurance node is insane. Like just 4 endurance charges is crazy. Okay, and then as for keystones, we're picking up Iron Will for some damage, Mage Bane to cap our suppression. You'll see here we 42% suppression of just the tree in Mage Bane. It's super nice. This is 0 suppression on any gear, so it's actually quite comfortable capping suppression on this build. We go Pain Attunement because we are eventually, like, obviously we're going low life to get some more damage there. It's very simple, very nice. And then Lethe Shade will counteract obviously the big downside of going low life is the fact that damage over time effects can kill you very fast. With Lethe Shade, obviously this is the perfect counter to that. So they cover each other's downsides. It's quite simple and nice. As for the gems, Reap will be your single targets. Early on, it may be worth it to link faster casting in here instead of, maybe Swift Affliction or Life Tap, simply because early on you do not have the cast speed. We're lacking the frenzies and onslaught on single target that we previously had in the Ascended version. So definitely consider that if you feel it's a little clunky. It's just super easy to swap in, so don't worry about that. Early on, you will be using Life Tap just as an extra damage multiplier, but you will eventually want to swap that with Empower when you get into the higher budgets. And Empower is an insane damage increase, so definitely look out for that. Your clear skill will be Exsanguinate. You can choose to use either Faster Casting or Unleash, depending on which playstyle you prefer. I prefer Faster Casting, but some people do like Unleash, so that's an option to consider. And then Corrupting Fever is just some extra damage to go along with your clear and your single targets. You can choose between brutality and efficacy. Honestly, just go with whatever gem links you have. If you have a blue socket, go for efficacy. If you have a red socket, go for brutality. The main trade-off is that sometimes early on, before you get any quality on Corrupting Fever, you can lose it while mapping, and the efficacy allows it to stay a little bit longer. So definitely consider that trade-off early on. And then for your movement skill, you're going to be using Flame Dash linked to Life Tap, and then you will be self-casting Vulnerability until you get a Vulnerability on hit ring. I go over how to make this in the notes section. You will eventually replace Vulnerability. When you do get that Vulnerability on hit ring, you will be replacing it with Righteous Fires. Because we are going low life, we're going to be reserving some of our life with an Arrogant setup. Typically, you want to do Vitality, and then depending on, in hardcore, I'm going to recommend Tempest Shield with like a Glancing Blows setup. But in softcore, Herald of Purity has good damage. Definitely consider going for that one. And then you have your choice of guard skill here, either Molten Shell or Steel Skin. Some people like the bleed immunity from Steel Skin. Personally, I just prefer Molten Shell. I mean, we have a decent amount of armor. It's pretty strong, actually. And you'll be linking that to Automation and Life Tap. You'll notice we have the Life Tap on 2 different setups simply because we are reserving all of our mana. You literally have no mana costs at all. It is just all pure life costs. So very, very smooth. We have an insane amount of regen, so like we sustain this super, super easily, and the life leech on hit as well. And then finally, obviously, Petrified Blood, we're low life, Determination, and Pride for just some extra damage and tankiness. Pretty simple, just slot those in wherever. As for gearing, in hardcore, obviously, you're going to be doing a wand and a shield setup, but I do recommend in softcore trade specifically to go for like a Cold Iron Point setup. Dual Cold Iron Points is an incredible amount of damage. 3 levels disgusting. Like, definitely consider just going for that. It's way cheaper than self-crafting a +2 wand. If you are in SSF like I will be, this wand is incredibly easy to craft, super deterministic, nothing you need to worry about there. And then you will also be using suppression gear, obviously your armor evasion, get your suppression cap. It's so strong for tank. We're fairly easy to get suppression capped. You'll see here I have like 33% over just to show how much you can get. Fairly simple. We are losing a lot of the physical damage taken as elemental on gear that I mentioned that earlier. There is a mod going to be on body armor. It's not supported in POB, and we don't know the actual number, so I just kind of threw 8% in there, hoping. But definitely pick that up for some extra tank. You'll be using a Jade Amulet, because dexterity is our biggest weakness there. If you're struggling to get intelligence for this wand, you can use a lower requirement base. I believe the Pagan wand has like the lowest int requirement for cast speed, but we're getting a few different base types, so definitely keep an eye out for any good ones. I don't know what they all are yet, so you'll have to wait and see. And then the vulnerability on hit ring, like I mentioned. Try and pick up some cast speed on rings. You can get this with Essences of Zeal, and then be sure to Catalyst, obviously, for the extra percent. It makes Reap just feel so much more smooth. And then for flasks, obviously we are scaling armor, so you're going to be picking up a Granite and a Basalt Flask. Early on, you can use a Life Flask, but because we have so much regen and Life Leech, I don't really see the point in using a Life Flask. As long as you have like immunity to bleed, you should be fine from that. That's like the biggest weakness. Anything else, don't really need it. But early on, Life Flask is totally fine. And then you can get immunity to freeze on a flask. You can also do it on your Pantheon, but personally, I think the Arakali Pantheon is just stronger for getting rid of our biggest weakness, which is damage over time. It's just an option. Do whatever you prefer. You'll be using a Silver Flask because that's the best way to get Onslaught, and then a Sulfur Flask is just a nice little bit of extra damage. And the Consecrated Ground buff is actually quite helpful in something like a boss fight. Obviously, just having something to stand on that gives you a good amount of regen is quite helpful. And then obviously a Quicksilver. Duh. I just have some example jewels here for stats that you want. I have some other ones in here too. Definitely just take a look at them. They're just some good stats that you'll want. And then obviously in a trade environment, you can consider a Lightning Coil for a good amount of tank as well. It's just 50% more armor, basically. You can count it like that. Incredibly strong, incredibly useful. You can self-farm these with the div cards, but personally, I'd rather just craft my own. It's just easier that way. Into the min-max setup, obviously you're going to be doing power charge stacking, so that's dual void batteries. You can go a more tanky setup with a shield and like maybe even like a lightning coil, but definitely if you're just looking for incredible damage, this is going to be the way to do it. And then these gloves, the Uber Shaper gloves, allow you to inflict Impale on crit with spells. This is pretty much the crux of the whole build. It's incredibly strong. It's a disgusting amount of DPS. And then, like I mentioned, you can make it tankier. It's just a personal preference kind of thing. And then I will be live streaming playing either this build or my Instant Strain Contagion, which I plan to put out a guide on that as well. If I have the time, we'll see. So feel free to check me out. It's in the notes section right here. TFW Starving on Twitch TV. Thanks for watching, and good luck on League Start.